This video is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult a qualified healthcare professional before making any health-related decision.
Every second, your heart pushes blood through nearly 60,000 miles of vessels inside your body, and after 60, those vessels begin to whisper a warning. If you don't learn to listen now, that whisper can become a crisis. Movement after 60 is not about athletic performance or aesthetic ambition. It is about preserving the biological intelligence of the arteries. With advancing age, blood vessels gradually lose elasticity. The once supple arterial walls begin to stiffen as elastin fibers fragment and collagen becomes more dominant. This structural shift increases vascular resistance, meaning the heart must generate greater pressure to maintain adequate blood flow. Over time, this persistent elevation in force contributes to hypertension. Yet the vascular system is not inert, it is exquisitely sensitive to mechanical stimulus. When the body moves, the arteries respond. Each time you walk, your muscles contract rhythmically, compressing nearby veins and assisting the return of blood to the heart. This reduces venous pooling and improves circulatory efficiency. The heart no longer works in isolation. The skeletal muscles become partners in propulsion. This cooperation lowers strain on the cardiovascular system, but the most profound effect occurs at the microscopic level, along the inner lining of the arteries, the endothelium. This delicate cellular layer regulates vascular tone, inflammation, and clotting. When blood flows more briskly during physical activity, it creates shear stress along this lining. That friction is not harmful, it is instructive. It stimulates endothelial cells to produce nitric oxide, a molecule that signals the surrounding smooth muscle to relax. As the muscle relaxes, the artery widens. When arteries widen, resistance falls. When resistance falls, blood pressure decreases. After 60, nitric oxide production often declines. The endothelium becomes less responsive, contributing to increased vascular stiffness. However, consistent moderate exercise can partially restore this function. Even a daily 30-minute brisk walk has been shown to improve endothelial responsiveness within weeks. The key is consistency, not intensity. The aging cardiovascular system does not require sudden bursts of maximal effort. It thrives on steady, repeated signals that encourage adaptation without provoking excessive stress hormones. There is also a structural adaptation that unfolds with regular activity. Exercise promotes arterial remodeling, meaning the vessels gradually adjust their diameter and elasticity in response to repeated demand. Think of it as gentle conditioning for the vascular tree. When arteries are asked to expand and contract regularly, they retain more of their functional flexibility. Without movement, stiffness accelerates. Sedentary behavior allows the vessels to remain in a relatively constricted state, reinforcing rigidity over time. Movement also influences blood pressure through metabolic pathways. Physical activity enhances insulin sensitivity, enabling glucose to enter cells more efficiently. Improved insulin function reduces circulating insulin levels, which in excess can promote sodium retention and sympathetic nervous system activation. By improving metabolic balance, exercise indirectly reduces mechanisms that elevate blood pressure. Additionally, muscle tissue acts as a reservoir for glucose and fatty acids, decreasing the inflammatory burden associated with excess adipose tissue. Chronic low-grade inflammation contributes to endothelial dysfunction and vascular constriction. By reducing inflammation, movement protects arterial integrity. The autonomic nervous system is another pathway through which physical activity exerts its effect. The body operates under two complementary branches: the sympathetic system, which mobilizes energy and elevates heart rate and blood pressure, and the parasympathetic system, which restores calm and lowers cardiovascular strain. Regular aerobic exercise enhances vagal tone, strengthening parasympathetic influence at rest. This results in a lower resting heart rate and improved heart rate variability, both markers of cardiovascular resilience. Over time, improved autonomic balance contributes to sustained reductions in baseline blood pressure. For individuals over 60, resistance training carries additional value. Light to moderate strength exercises preserve muscle mass, which naturally declines with age in a process known as sarcopenia. Maintaining muscle mass supports metabolic stability and glucose regulation. Moreover, stronger muscles improve functional independence, reducing the likelihood of sedentary patterns that exacerbate hypertension. Resistance training need not involve heavy loads. Controlled movements using body weight, resistance bands, or light dumbbells are sufficient to stimulate adaptation. Flexibility and balance exercises, such as gentle yoga or tai chi, offer subtler but meaningful cardiovascular benefits. These practices combine controlled movement with intentional breathing, reinforcing parasympathetic activation while improving circulation. Slow transitions between postures ensure vascular responsiveness without imposing abrupt cardiovascular demands. The rhythm of coordinated breath and motion fosters both mechanical and neurological relaxation. Importantly, movement must be sustainable. The physiology of aging favors regularity over intensity. A daily routine of moderate activity accumulates cumulative vascular benefits. Sporadic, strenuous effort followed by prolonged inactivity does not produce the same adaptive effect. Arteries respond to repeated, predictable stimulus. Walking in natural light, climbing stairs deliberately, gardening, cycling at a comfortable pace, these are not trivial activities. They are therapeutic interventions encoded in simple behavior. The psychological dimension of movement should not be overlooked. Physical activity reduces anxiety and depressive symptoms, both which correlate with elevated blood pressure. When mood stabilizes, stress hormones decline, and vascular tone improves. The mind and cardiovascular system are deeply interconnected. Movement acts as a bridge between emotional regulation and physiological balance. Even individuals who have lived decades with limited activity can experience measurable improvement. The vascular system retains plasticity. Within weeks of consistent exercise, systolic and diastolic pressures often decline by several millimeters of mercury, a change that significantly reduces cardiovascular risk at the population level. These improvements are not abstract statistics. They represent decreased strain on arterial walls, reduced likelihood of plaque rupture, and improved cerebral and renal perfusion. After 60, the body does not demand perfection, it demands participation. Each step, each stretch, each measured breath taken during movement sends a biological message to the cardiovascular system. The message is simple yet powerful: remain adaptable, remain open, remain responsive. Through consistent motion, arteries are reminded of their original design, flexible conduits capable of accommodating the rhythm of life without excessive force, without unnecessary resistance, without silent escalation of pressure within their walls. Food after 60 is no longer just fuel for activity or pleasure for the senses, it becomes a direct regulator of vascular chemistry. Every bite you take dissolves into molecules that enter your bloodstream and interact with the delicate systems that govern blood pressure. The arteries do not interpret meals emotionally, they respond biochemically. Sodium alters fluid balance. Potassium modifies electrical gradients. Fats influence inflammation. Fiber changes metabolic signaling. In this stage of life, when vascular elasticity naturally declines, nutrition becomes one of the most precise tools available for restoring equilibrium. One of the most immediate dietary influences on blood pressure is sodium. Sodium is essential for nerve transmission and muscle contraction, but in excess it alters osmotic balance. When sodium concentration rises in the bloodstream, the body retains water to dilute it. This increase in fluid volume expands the total amount of blood within the vessels. Greater volume exerts greater pressure against arterial walls. In younger years, flexible arteries may accommodate some of this expansion. After 60, when vessels are less compliant, the same volume increase produces a more pronounced rise in pressure. Reducing sodium intake is therefore not about deprivation. It is about decreasing unnecessary fluid load. Processed foods, preserved meats, packaged snacks, and restaurant meals often contain hidden sodium levels far beyond physiological need. When these sources are replaced with whole, minimally processed foods, blood pressure frequently declines within weeks. Yet sodium reduction alone is incomplete without considering potassium. Potassium works in physiological opposition to sodium. It assists in relaxing blood vessel walls and promotes the excretion of excess sodium through the kidneys. Adequate potassium intake improves vascular tone, moderates the pressure exerted within arteries. Foods such as spinach, beans, avocados, sweet potatoes, yogurt, and bananas naturally contain potassium in biologically balanced forms. Increasing these foods shifts the internal electrolyte ratio toward a state that favors dilation rather than constriction. It is not simply about subtracting salt. It is about restoring mineral harmony. Fiber introduces another layer of influence. Soluble fiber binds cholesterol within the digestive tract, reducing its absorption and lowering circulating low-density lipoprotein levels. Elevated LDL contributes to atherosclerotic plaque formation, which narrows arteries and increases resistance to blood flow. Narrower vessels require greater force to maintain circulation, raising blood pressure. By improving lipid profiles, fiber indirectly preserves arterial diameter and elasticity. Whole grains, legumes, vegetables, and fruits provide fiber in forms that also nourish beneficial gut bacteria. Emerging research reveals that the gut microbiome influences systemic inflammation and vascular health. When fiber intake increases, microbial fermentation produces short-chain fatty acids that support endothelial function and reduce inflammatory signaling. Inflammation is a quiet contributor to hypertension. Chronic low-grade inflammatory activity damages the endothelial lining, impairing its ability to produce nitric oxide. Without adequate nitric oxide, arteries remain relatively constricted. Diets high in refined sugars, trans fats, and heavily processed foods amplify inflammatory pathways. Conversely, foods rich in antioxidant phytonutrients counteract oxidative stress. Berries, leafy greens, tomatoes, nuts, seeds, and olive oil contain compounds that neutralize free radicals before they damage vascular tissue. These antioxidants do not act dramatically in a single meal. Their influence accumulates through daily exposure, gradually protecting the integrity of arterial walls. Healthy fats deserve careful consideration. Not all fats affect blood pressure equally. Diets high in saturated and trans fats can stiffen cell membranes and promote inflammation, contributing to endothelial dysfunction. In contrast, monounsaturated and omega-3 fatty acids support membrane fluidity and reduce inflammatory mediators. Fatty fish such as salmon, sardines, and mackerel provide omega-3s that improve vascular responsiveness and may modestly reduce blood pressure. Olive oil, nuts, and seeds offer monounsaturated fats that align with cardiovascular outcomes. These fats do not lower blood pressure through volume shifts like sodium reduction. They enhance the structural and functional properties of the vascular system. Carbohydrate quality also shapes blood pressure regulation. Highly refined carbohydrates produce rapid spikes in blood glucose, triggering significant insulin release. Persistently elevated insulin levels can increase sympathetic nervous system activity and encourage sodium retention by the kidneys. Both mechanisms elevate blood pressure. Choosing complex carbohydrates with lower glycemic impact, such as oats, quinoa, legumes, and vegetables, stabilizes blood glucose and reduces insulin fluctuations. Stable insulin signaling translates into more stable vascular tone. Hydration is frequently overlooked in discussions of nutrition and blood pressure. Mild dehydration stimulates the release of vasopressin and activates compensatory mechanisms that may increase vascular resistance. Adequate water intake supports normal blood volume without forcing the body into conservation mode. After 60, the sensation of thirst often diminishes, making intentional hydration important. Water, herbal teas, and water-rich foods contribute to balanced fluid status without introducing excess sodium or sugar. Portion size influences mechanical and hormonal responses as well. Large, heavy meals require increased cardiac output during digestion, temporarily raising circulatory demand. Over time, habitual overeating contributes to weight gain and metabolic strain, both of which elevate blood pressure. Eating moderate portions at regular intervals stabilizes metabolic load and reduces extreme fluctuations in vascular demand. Mindful eating, chewing slowly, recognizing satiety signals, avoiding distracted consumption, supports this balance. Alcohol intake also interacts with blood pressure regulation. While small amounts may have neutral or modest effects in some individuals, regular excessive consumption increases sympathetic activation and impairs vascular relaxation. After 60, alcohol metabolism slows, amplifying its hemodynamic impact. Moderation becomes increasingly significant for maintaining stable readings. The beauty of nutritional influence lies in its cumulative effect. Each meal is a data point entered into the body's regulatory system. No single food determines your cardiovascular destiny. Rather, patterns of intake shape the biochemical environment in which your heart and arteries operate. When meals emphasize whole plant foods, balanced minerals, healthy fats, and controlled portions, the bloodstream becomes less inflammatory, less viscous, and less demanding on arterial walls. After 60, the objective, rigid dietary perfection but thoughtful calibration. Small, Consistent adjustments alter electrolyte balance, improve endothelial function, stabilize metabolic signaling, and reduce vascular resistance. The arteries respond quietly but measurably. They widen more readily. They endure less oxidative strain. They accommodate blood flow with less force. Food becomes more than nourishment. It becomes structural support for the vascular system, a daily opportunity to reduce pressure from within, to soften resistance, to create an internal environment where the heart can work with efficiency rather than strain, where circulation flows with steadiness instead of tension, where each bite participates in the subtle art of restoring balance to the aging. Weight is not merely a number on a scale after 60. It represents a complex interplay between mechanical stress, hormonal signaling, and metabolic balance, all of which influence blood pressure. Adipose tissue is not inert. It is metabolically active, secreting hormones and cytokines that interact with the cardiovascular system. Excess body fat, particularly around the abdomen, produces inflammatory molecules such as interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, which contribute to endothelial dysfunction. The endothelium, the delicate inner lining of blood vessels, relies on nitric oxide to maintain dilation and regulate pressure. Chronic inflammation impairs this process, causing arteries to constrict more readily, which increases systemic vascular resistance and elevates blood pressure. Maintaining or reducing body weight is therefore not cosmetic, it is a direct intervention in vascular biology. Mechanical load is another critical factor. The heart is a pump, and like any pump, it must overcome resistance to move fluid effectively. Every additional kilogram of body weight increases the volume of blood and the resistance that the heart must work against. The larger the mass, the more cardiac output is required to sustain adequate perfusion to tissues. Over time, this chronic demand leads to structural changes in the heart, including left ventricular hypertrophy, which further elevates systolic blood pressure and increases the risk of cardiovascular events. Even modest reductions in weight, 5 to 10% of total body mass, have been shown to reduce systolic and diastolic pressure, illustrating the sensitivity of the cardiovascular system to mechanical load. Weight also interacts with hormonal regulation in ways that directly influence vascular tone. Adipose tissue secretes leptin, a hormone involved in appetite regulation, but elevated leptin levels associated with excess fat collate sympathetic nervous system activity, increasing heart rate and vascular constriction. Additionally, insulin resistance often accompanies higher body fat, particularly visceral fat. Insulin has vasodilatory effects under normal conditions, but when cells become resistant, circulating insulin levels remain high, encouraging sodium retention by the kidneys and activation of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. These mechanisms converge to raise blood pressure. Reducing body fat improves insulin sensitivity, lowers circulating leptin, and decreases sympathetic overactivation, all of which support lower vascular resistance. Distribution of weight is also significant. Visceral fat, the fat surrounding internal organs, is metabolically more active and more closely linked to hypertension than subcutaneous fat. Central obesity correlates with increased inflammatory markers, impaired nitric oxide production, and higher sympathetic tone. Even if total body weight does not change dramatically, reducing abdominal girth through diet and exercise can meaningfully improve blood pressure regulation. Strengthening core muscles and engaging in activities that mobilize visceral fat, such as walking, swimming, and resistance exercises, help redistribute metabolic stress and reduce its impact on vascular function. Muscle mass plays a complementary role in this relationship. Skeletal muscle is not only important for mobility but also for metabolic efficiency. Muscle tissue consumes glucose and fatty acids, decreasing circulating substrates that contribute to insulin resistance and inflammation. After 60, sarcopenia, the natural decline of muscle mass with age, can exacerbate weight-related blood pressure elevation because less muscle tissue is available to buffer metabolic load. Preserving or increasing lean muscle mass through resistance training helps offset the negative effects of adiposity, supporting vascular health indirectly by improving metabolic balance. Caloric balance is another factor in blood pressure control. Excess energy intake leads to fat accumulation, while sustained moderate caloric restriction encourages gradual weight loss without triggering stress responses associated with starvation. The rate of weight loss matters. Rapid, Unsustainable reductions can activate the sympathetic nervous system, increase cortisol, and paradoxically elevate blood pressure. Slow, deliberate adjustments maintain hormonal stability and allow the cardiovascular system to adapt progressively to lower mechanical and metabolic load. Diet composition influences weight-related blood pressure effects. Protein diets can support muscle preservation during weight loss, while fiber-rich foods promote satiety and stabilize blood glucose, reducing refined carbohydrates and added sugar events insulin spikes that contribute to sodium retention and sympathetic overactivity. Healthy fats, such as those found in olive oil, nuts, and fatty fish, support anti-inflammatory pathways that complement the mechanical benefits of weight reduction. The synergy between body composition and diet quality creates a vascular environment more capable of maintaining optimal pressure. Lifestyle factors beyond diet and exercise also modulate the relationship between weight and blood pressure. Sleep quality affects appetite, regulating hormones such as leptin and ghrelin. Chronic sleep deprivation can increase cravings and promote weight gain, particularly in the abdominal region. Stress management reduces cortisol, which otherwise encourages fat accumulation around internal organs. Even social engagement and mental stimulation indirectly support weight control by influencing activity levels and reducing emotional eating. Weight management, therefore, is an integrated practice that extends beyond calorie counting or exercise routines alone. The cardiovascular system is remarkably sensitive to incremental changes in weight. Studies demonstrate that even small reductions in body can result in measurable declines in systolic and diastolic pressure, illustrating that the body responds dynamically rather than requiring perfect compliance. This responsiveness underscores the principle that weight management after 60 is not about achieving an idealized number, but about creating physiological conditions that reduce strain on the heart and vessels. Each kilogram lost reduces the mechanical workload, lowers sympathetic tone, improves endothelial function, and enhances metabolic balance, cumulatively producing meaningful improvements in blood pressure regulation. Weight management also fosters resilience against age-related vascular changes. Arterial stiffness naturally increases with age, but reducing fat mass alleviates some of the pressure exerted on vessel walls, allowing them to function more flexibly. It improves nitric oxide availability, lowers inflammatory signaling, and reduces the likelihood of structural remodeling that can further elevate systolic pressure. By decreasing both the mechanical and biochemical burdens of excess adiposity, weight control after 60 becomes a profound act of cardiovascular preservation, influencing both the immediate readings on a blood pressure monitor and the long-term integrity of the heart and vessels. Maintaining a balanced body composition also interacts with other blood pressure lowering strategies, enhancing their efficacy. Physical activity is more effective when it is performed at a manageable body weight, as cardiovascular strain is reduced and endurance improves. Nutritional interventions are amplified because excess fat does not interfere with insulin sensitivity or inflammatory regulation to the same extent. Stress management and sleep benefit from reduced visceral adiposity, as hormonal pathways are more stable and recovery is more efficient. Weight control, therefore, is not an isolated strategy, it is an organizing principle that magnifies the effects of all other interventions, creating a coherent, biologically aligned approach to lowering blood pressure naturally after 60. After 60, the emphasis is not on perfection but on sustainable, meaningful change. Even modest reductions in weight, combined with attention to muscle preservation, dietary quality, and lifestyle habits, produce measurable improvements in vascular function. The cardiovascular system responds to mechanical relief, improved metabolic signaling, and decreased inflammatory activity with reductions in resistance, lower blood pressure, and enhanced adaptability. Weight is both a measure and a mechanism. By thoughtfully managing it, the body is given the opportunity to operate with efficiency rather than strain, to recalibrate its hormonal and metabolic systems, and to maintain vascular health in ways that extend both lifespan and vitality. Stress is not merely a psychological experience after 60, it is a physiological state that reverberates through every system in the body, especially the cardiovascular system. The sympathetic nervous system, which evolved to prepare the body for acute threats, becomes chronically activated when stress is persistent, subtle, or unrecognized. This activation triggers the release of catecholamines, including adrenaline and noradrenaline, which increase heart rate, constrict blood vessels, and elevate blood pressure. While these responses were life-saving in moments of sudden danger during human evolution, chronic stimulation is maladaptive, particularly for aging arteries that are already experiencing stiffness, reduced elasticity, and endothelial decline. In effect, stress transforms transient protective mechanisms into long-term vascular strain, producing sustained elevations in blood pressure. The effects of chronic stress are compounded by hormonal mediators such as cortisol. Elevated cortisol increases sodium retention in the kidneys, alters glucose metabolism, and contributes to visceral fat accumulation. Each of these consequences exerts additional pressure on the cardiovascular system. Sodium retention increases intravascular volume, making the heart work harder with every beat. Altered glucose metabolism and insulin resistance amplify vascular inflammation, reducing the bioavailability of nitric oxide and diminishing opacity of arteries to relax. Visceral fat, as an endocrine organ, secretes inflammatory cytokines that further impair endothelial function. Together, these pathways converge to elevate blood pressure and create a state of chronic cardiovascular strain that can persist silently for decades. Neurological pathways link the mind directly to the vascular system. When the brain perceives threat, whether real or imagined, the hypothalamus activates the sympathetic nervous system and signals the adrenal glands to release stress hormones. Blood vessels constrict, heart rate rises, and blood is diverted to muscles in preparation for action. After 60, the body's recovery mechanisms slow. Parasympathetic activity, which normally counterbalances sympathetic surges, is often diminished due to aging-related declines in vagal tone. The result is prolonged periods of elevated heart rate and vascular constriction, leaving arteries under greater mechanical stress and increasing systolic pressure. This interplay demonstrates that stress management is not an abstract concept, it is a direct regulator of blood pressure through neurovascular mechanisms. Intentional interventions that engage the parasympathetic system can restore balance. Slow, controlled breathing is a simple yet profound method to activate the vagus nerve, which communicates directly with the heart and blood vessels to reduce heart rate and encourage vasodilation. Techniques such as diaphragmatic breathing or coherent breathing, where inhalation and exhalation are balanced over several seconds, can measurably lower blood pressure within minutes. These practices work because they shift autonomic dominance from sympathetic to parasympathetic, reducing the chemical signals that maintain constriction and allowing arteries to relax. Over time, regular engagement of the parasympathetic system improves baseline vascular tone, making the body more resilient to daily stressors. Meditative practices, mindfulness exercises, and reflective stillness extend these benefits by combining controlled breathing with cognitive regulation. When the mind focuses on present experience rather than ruminating on past or future threats, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis experiences less activation. Cortisol secretion stabilizes, and sympathetic signaling is tempered. These effects are amplified by consistent practice. The cardiovascular system learns to anticipate calm rather than threat, producing a sustained decrease in resting blood pressure. The subtle changes in autonomic balance translate into tangible, physiological outcomes, demonstrating that mental states are inseparable from vascular function. Stress also interacts with behavioral patterns which indirectly influence blood pressure. Chronic worry and tension often promote poor dietary choices, disrupted sleep, and reduced physical activity. Each of these behaviors independently elevates vascular resistance and circulatory strain. Conversely, stress reduction encourages healthier habits. Improved sleep quality allows the natural nocturnal dip in blood pressure to occur. Mindful eating reduces overconsumption and sodium intake, and increased activity enhances endothelial function and metabolic balance. By addressing stress, multiple convergent pathways that contribute to hypertension and mitigated, producing an integrated effect that supports cardiovascular resilience after 60. Social and emotional dimensions further influence stress and blood pressure. Loneliness, isolation, and unresolved interpersonal conflict can activate the same sympathetic pathways as immediate physical threats. Conversely, supportive social interactions, emotional connection, and purposeful engagement promote parasympathetic activation and release of oxytocin, which has vasodilatory and anti-inflammatory effects. In this sense, the quality of relationships and emotional fulfillment after 60 has a tangible impact on vascular health. Caring for social and emotional well-being becomes not only a psychological priority, but a physiological intervention with measurable influence on blood pressure. Even subtle, everyday stresses accumulate to affect vascular tone. Traffic congestion, financial worries, and minor irritations activate sympathetic responses repeatedly throughout the day. While each episode may be brief, the cumulative effect resembles chronic low-grade activation, keeping blood vessels in a slightly constricted state for much of the waking hours. The arteries, already less flexible due to age-related changes, respond with sustained pressure elevation. Recognizing the pervasive influence of these micros emphasizes that stress management is a continual process, not a singular event. Small, repeated practices, pausing for slow breaths, brief mindfulness exercises, walking outdoors, serve to interrupt the sympathetic cascade and preserve arterial function. The physiological impact of stress is also measurable at the cellular level. Chronic sympathetic activation increases oxidative stress and the production of free radicals, which damage endothelial cells and reduce nitric oxide availability. This diminishes the ability of arteries to dilate appropriately, further contributing to hypertension. Anti-inflammatory and antioxidant, rich foods, adequate hydration, and regular physical activity complement stress management, but the neural and hormonal effects of tension remain distinct. Reducing sympathetic overactivation through mental and behavioral strategies therefore represents a unique and essential component of blood pressure control. After 60, the interplay between stress and blood pressure becomes even more pronounced. Aging arteries are less resilient, endothelial function declines, and the cumulative effects of lifestyle, metabolic health, and hormonal shifts make them more sensitive to sympathetic surges. Each unmitigated stress episode exerts a greater mechanical and biochemical effect than it would in a younger, more adaptable system. Interventions that reduce stress, breathing, meditation, social engagement, mindfulness, and intentional relaxation provide both immediate relief and long-term protective effects by allowing vascular walls to remain flexible, endothelial function to improve, and systemic pressure to stabilize. The cumulative impact of these interventions can be measured in millimeters of mercury, but their significance extends far beyond numerical reduction, influencing arterial integrity, cardiac workload, and the body's capacity to recover from daily demands. Stress management, therefore, is not optional for blood pressure control after 60, it is an essential regulator of neurovascular function, hormonal balance, metabolic efficiency, and arterial resilience. Every moment of intentional calm reshapes sympathetic and parasympathetic interplay, modulates inflammatory signaling, reduces oxidative damage, and allows the cardiovascular system to operate closer to its natural set point. By engaging in practices that reduce tension, enhance mindfulness, and foster emotional well-being, the arteries are given the opportunity to dilate more fully, the heart operates under less strain, and the overall pressure within the vascular system declines. This demonstrates that mental and emotional states are inseparable from physical health, and that managing stress is a precise, biologically grounded strategy for naturally lowering blood pressure and supporting cardiovascular vitality after 60. Sleep is not simply a passive state of rest after 60, it is an active, restorative process that profoundly influences blood pressure regulation. During deep sleep, the body undergoes physiological shifts that reduce heart rate, dilate blood vessels, and allow the cardiovascular system to recover from daytime demands. This nocturnal dip in blood pressure, known as nocturnal dipping, is critical for arterial health. As arteries age, their elasticity diminishes, making them less capable of accommodating persistent high pressure. Sleep provides a natural, nightly period during which the heart pumps against reduced resistance, allowing endothelial cells to repair, nitric oxide availability to normalize, and oxidative stress to decrease. Without sufficient deep sleep, this restorative window is compromised, and blood pressure may remain elevated around the clock, increasing the risk of long-term cardiovascular complications. After 60, sleep patterns often shift due to changes in circadian rhythm, hormonal fluctuations, and alterations in melatonin production. Older adults frequently experience earlier bedtimes, fragmented sleep, and lighter stages of rest, which reduce the proportion of slow, wave and rapid eye movement sleep that are most restorative. This fragmentation has measurable effects on blood pressure. Studies indicate that disrupted or shortened sleep correlates with higher systolic and diastolic readings, elevated sympathetic activity, and impaired endothelial function. In essence, poor sleep deprives the cardiovascular system of its natural nightly respite, forcing arteries to endure prolonged periods of tension and the heart to maintain higher output for longer intervals. Sleep also interacts closely with hormonal regulation. During deep sleep, cortisol levels naturally decline, providing relief from the chronic effects of this stress hormone on vascular tone. Cortisol excess contributes to sodium retention fluid imbalance and increased sympathetic activation, all mechanisms that elevate blood pressure. Growth hormone secretion, which peaks during slow-wave sleep, supports tissue repair, including endothelial restoration, collagen maintenance, and vascular elasticity. Melatonin, in addition to regulating circadian rhythm, has direct vasodilatory and antioxidant effects, enhancing the ability of arteries to relax during the night. When sleep is inadequate, these hormonal cycles are disrupted, leading to sustained vascular strain and diminished capacity for recovery. The sympathetic and parasympathetic balance is particularly sensitive to sleep quality. During restorative sleep, parasympathetic activity predominates, slowing the heart rate, reducing vascular resistance, and lowering circulating catecholamines such as adrenaline and noradrenaline. This autonomic shift allows the cardiovascular system to experience reduced mechanical stress, which is essential for maintaining long-term vascular flexibility. In contrast, fragmented or insufficient sleep elevates sympathetic tone, leaving blood vessels constricted for prolonged periods, reducing nitric oxide availability, and increasing both systolic and diastolic pressure. Over time, these repeated nightly deficits accumulate, exacerbating hypertension and contributing to vascular stiffening, endothelial damage, and cardiac remodeling. Nutrition and lifestyle choices strongly influence sleep quality and, consequently, blood pressure regulation. Late caffeine intake, excessive alcohol, heavy meals close to bedtime, and irregular sleep schedules all disrupt circadian rhythm and reduce the proportion of deep restorative sleep. Conversely, consistent sleep timing, lighter evening meals, reduced exposure to bright screens before bed, and calming pre-sleep routines promote longer periods of slow-wave sleep. Even minor adjustments, such as dimming lights an hour before bed or engaging in gentle stretching or meditation, can enhance parasympathetic activation, lower nighttime blood pressure, and allow the cardiovascular system to recover more effectively. Physical activity further supports sleep-mediated blood pressure regulation. Regular daytime exercise promotes more efficient sleep cycles, increases the proportion of slow-wave sleep, and enhances circadian rhythm alignment. Movement increases energy expenditure, reduces restlessness, and facilitates deeper relaxation at night. In turn, this deeper sleep improves nocturnal dipping, allowing the arteries and heart to experience predictable reductions in pressure. In older adults, even moderate exercise such as walking, swimming, or resistance training contributes to more restorative sleep, creating a positive feedback loop that enhances cardiovascular health through both activity and recovery. Stress management and emotional well-being are intricately connected to sleep quality. Elevated stress levels interfere with the onset and maintenance of deep sleep, prolonging sympathetic activation and raising nighttime blood pressure. Practices such as mindfulness meditation, breathing exercises, and relaxation techniques before bed help reduce cortisol levels, shift autonomic balance toward parasympathetic dominance, and allow the vascular system to experience genuine relaxation. The reduction in nocturnal sympathetic activity has a direct impact on blood pressure, lowering both baseline readings and the overall burden on the arteries. Sleep also plays a role in metabolic regulation that influences blood pressure. Inadequate sleep disrupts appetite hormones such as leptin and ghrelin, promoting increased caloric intake, weight gain, and accumulation of visceral fat. Visceral adiposity is metabolically active and contributes to inflammation, endothelial dysfunction, and heightened sympathetic activity, all pathways that raise blood pressure. By supporting adequate and consistent sleep, hormonal regulation is stabilized appetite is better controlled, and vascular strain is reduced indirectly through improved metabolic function. The cumulative effect of sleep on metabolism, weight, and endothelial health underscores its central role in natural blood pressure control after 60. Hydration patterns and environmental factors also intersect with sleep-mediated vascular benefits. Mild dehydration can trigger vasopressin release, which increases vascular resistance and limits nocturnal blood pressure reduction. A bedroom environment that is quiet, cool, and dark supports uninterrupted restorative sleep, whereas disruptions from light, noise, or temperature extremes can fragment cycles and blunt the natural nocturnal dip in blood pressure. Attention to these subtle details amplifies the physiological benefits of sleep, highlighting that blood pressure control is not only a matter of what occurs during the day, but also how the body rests and recovers at night. Even brief improvements in sleep quality can have measurable effects on blood pressure. Studies show that extending sleep by even 30-60 minutes, enhancing slow-wave sleep through consistent routines, and minimizing interruptions can reduce systolic pressure by several millimeters of mercury. These reductions may seem modest on a single night, but over weeks and months, the cumulative impact is significant. The cardiovascular system responds to repeated nightly cycles of restoration, and arteries, even after decades of exposure to elevated pressure, demonstrate remarkable adaptability when given sufficient opportunity to recover. Sleep, therefore, is not a passive state but a biologically active regulator of vascular health. After 60, it becomes increasingly important because age-related arterial stiffness, endothelial decline, and metabolic changes amplify the consequences of inadequate rest. By prioritizing restorative sleep, supporting circadian rhythm, managing lifestyle factors, and enhancing parasympathetic activation, older adults provide their cardiovascular system with the conditions necessary for nightly recovery, blood pressure stabilization, and long-term resilience. Each night of deep, uninterrupted sleep allows the arteries to relax, the heart to slow, oxidative stress to diminish, and hormonal balance to restore, creating an internal environment in which blood pressure can normalize naturally, and the body can maintain its vital rhythms with greater efficiency and stability.